to be looking at the ratio of debt to income and using that to determine whether or not you can actually even take on any more debt. This is something that from a loan officer a couple of years ago, he gave us the ratio of 43%. You cannot have more than 43% of your income going to debt, or they will not consider you for the loan, or if that loan gets you above that 43%, they will not give it to you. So if we look at it and we thought about it from our budgeting perspective, that means 43% of your needs category is going to paying for debt. That only leaves you 7% for other needs. Now, one of those debts could be your mortgage, and that's a good debt to have. That's counting as your part of your rent, and that's a good portion of it, and it should be a large portion of it. But this is where a lot of people get into trouble with having large student loans or large car payments or lots of credit cards, and they have troubles getting a house because they are not under that 43%. You don't want to spend your life close to that number. You want to stay as far away from it as possible. So let's go ahead and look at this family. This is the Jones family. They have a car payment of $450, and they have a credit card payments, and this is the min payments of $74. That's not saying that's what they're paying. That's the minimum amount they can pay each month on a credit card payment. And a student loan payment of $250. Their net income per month is $4,250. So we're trying to figure out how much debt, let's find out what their debt to income ratio is currently. So let's first find out their debt that they currently have. So if we count up all their debt, they had the car payment at $450. Plus they have the credit cards with a minimum payment of $74. Oops, that was not the button I wanted to hit. Plus they have $250 that's going into their student loan payments. So that gives us a total of $774. So their debt currently, their total monthly obligation for debt is $774. So if we're actually to calculate their debt to income ratio, and it's just like it says, debt over income, and then we're going to change it to a percent by multiplying it times 100. So their current debt was $774. Their current income is $4,250. So we're going to divide those two numbers and then multiply it times 100, and we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So 774 divided by 4,250 gives you 1821, and so we're going to multiply it times 100, and you end up with 18.2%. So right now they are staying way under that 43%, but really honestly, none of this debt is going towards their housing. So that means 18% of their needs category is being taken up with debt obligations they have. That means they are only left with just about just a little under 32% that they can use for housing. That's not going to include, and that needs to include also their gas, utilities, food. And so this person is, if you start looking at it, is going to be starting to get stretched then, because they're going to start going into their wants category to cover needs. So let's go ahead and let's calculate. Let's say we wanted to find out what the total amount monthly they could end up having. And we're going to take and do it with the 40% because we want to give ourselves some room, because things could happen, especially if you have credit cards. If you put anything on that credit card between the time you run this yourself to when you go into the bank, you could put yourself over that number. So when we are doing this, we need to say, okay, 40% of my income, that's going to be my total max debt load I could have. So my income was $4,250 times 40%, and that gives me $1,700. So our total max amount we could have in debt obligations is $1,700. We currently have $774. So we are going to find out how much they'd be willing to give us a loan for. We're going to take that $1,700 and we're going to subtract from it our current total debts that are outstanding. And that's going to give us $926. So if they were to max out and be at that 40% debt obligation, they could get a house valued at $926. Again, this is going to be going towards part of those needs. So we're looking in this category. And so that $926, we want to make sure that it's living under that 40% of our budget and that it's within our debt obligation amount. And so that's all things I need to consider before I start thinking about whether this loan is the right size loan for me. Because we do not want to be house poor, meaning we have more of a house than we really can afford and we're constantly being behind. And usually what people cut is they start making their savings go back smaller or even non-existent. So be careful about getting more house, even though you could afford with what the bank says you can afford it, doesn't mean you really need to take it on.